I'm Mark, an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I've been through this process with the grace of God and a couple of big book step study sponsors. I've made all the amends that I'm aware of or can do, and I try to do the best I can to practice the latter steps, all the steps in this process here. It's been a long time since I've been in this hall in St. Stephen's, but I used to come here many years ago when I lived in Grafton, Massachusetts. I now live in Litchfield, New Hampshire. So this chapter is talking about people who, in one way, shape, or form, like myself, had come to that there was a problem. That's a great gift that, you think that there is a problem. I think there's a lot of folks that just never really come to the conclusion that there is a problem, no matter how far down that they go. And that was not my case. I went down into despair and did not want to live. So a little bit of background, is how I got here and, what I was like or, where I came from. I came from a family that had plenty of alcoholism, drifted all the way through it, and most of the male members of the family. I was the first one that I know of that labeled it as a problem, or labeled it as a problem that I needed a real action to do something about it. As a little kid, I remember being on my back porch with my grandfather while he was sitting in pajamas, and he had the DTs. He was doing the at-home detox with my mom, his mother, and he was drinking paraldehyde, which is this, I don't know what the hell it was. I've looked it up later on in life. It's like a formaldehyde and all kinds of things that they would give him, and it stunk really bad, and my mother would order him out on the porch to drink it, because it came in a jar, as I recall, and you opened it up and wafted all around through the house, and he was shaking all over the place. And my job, I guess, was just to make sure if he fell down to go in and tell my mother that he fell down or something. And it seemed pretty normal. I didn't think that it was abnormal. I'm sure that a psychologist would say that this is a post-traumatic stress syndrome for me. It probably was, But that, and amongst many other episodes, it just seemed like a normal lifestyle. The concept of drinking to me as growing up was that it wasn't a social event. It wasn't an event, just, social lubrication perhaps, and chat with people, have a nice time. The purpose of drinking was certainly that, but that you got hammered. That was what's going to happen here. You're going to get hammered. And that it was a rite of passage. And I always thought that I would, would come of age and I would drink. And coming of age for me was around 13 years old. And I started drinking, and I never got any kind of pushback about that whatsoever at all. And at age 15, I was starting to smoke pot, and then it went on and on from there. The concept was that you just had to go to work. That was the benchmark of having a problem. The solution, that if it interfered with being a breadwinner, would be to change, as this chapter, I believe, go down to 2 drinks, or don't drink as much, or maybe lay off the hard stuff, or something of that nature. It was never abstinence. There was something wrong with you if you didn't drink. You were weird. You might be gay, or something. There's something very strange going on here, because everybody did drink. That was just the way it is. So there would be actually kind of a reverse shame to say, oh no, I don't drink. Although there was nobody in my family that actually did that I can recall. So the alcoholic life was the only one that I really knew. So I drank and drugged, and surprisingly, I did have a 2-drink limit. I remember at one time, but they were 2, martinis or something. I just picked the strongest drink you could possibly get with the most alcohol in it. and to cover myself for my so-called 2-drink limit because I had a problem. And I had lots of problems with cocaine during the 70s and stuff. Now, I've even seen this in today's world with some folks that know me that are not a member of this fellowship right here, and they'll say, oh, you really weren't, this is like during amends, you really weren't that bad, you know. Well, your wife was a bitch back then, you know. Of course you're going to like be popping benzos all the time, you know. That's an ex-wife too. You know, the family that I had, you know, struggled a bit with understanding that I had a problem with alcohol and drugs because the benchmark in their minds was far lower than what I achieved. It's just too bad I just didn't sink low enough to get to that. And they didn't really accept it. Low enough was that I wanted to blow my head off, you know, so I thought that was pretty low. And I ended up going into a depression ward for that. And that was a year of sobriety right there. So what happened, you know, and I'm getting to the point here about the power greater than ourselves can restore me to sanity. Just not drinking and going to meetings, I was still insane. I was still, you know, was I doing better? Yeah, you know, I guess so, you know. I mean, there weren't any debacles going on, or not nearly the amount of debacles that happened. But, you know, I didn't access God in any real fashion. It was not something that I knew how to do. And yet, you know, I thought that, you know, when we talked about a relationship with God, because I was raised as a Roman Catholic, and I never said I was agnostic or atheist, and I never was angry at God. I was, but I wasn't conscious of that. That I thought that I had whatever it was, a relationship with God, because I thought that's what the relationship with God. A relationship with God would be going to Mass on Sundays, you know. That would be it. Once in a while going to a confession, although I certainly gave up that a long time ago. So I didn't get that. I didn't understand that you could have a personal relationship with God. It was just a bare inkling of it. So without drinking or drugging and not having access to God, having all that gone, it was only one place for me to go, and that was, you know, going into the hell of depression and not wanting to live. Well, of course, I've come to believe today that if you don't have a relationship with God, you are living in goddamn hell, you know. There's no other way to say it, you know. Just state it right on out. Anybody can kid themselves about it, but in my mind, that's certainly how it is for me, that I would just be living in hell that way. And inside that, depression ward, I sat in there, and I said, "What? How did I get here? How did this possibly happen? Here I am, this big alpha male. You know, I had a business. I didn't think I was afraid of anybody or anything. I was aggressive and all that. And here I am, sitting around a circle with people crying and holding stuffed animals. It's just mind-boggling to me. I got here, So in that, the big thing that I got when I was in there was I was pulled aside on a regular basis with a psychologist. In this case, it was a really nice young woman, and she would talk one-on-one, and she'd say, "So how's things going?" I go, "This place sucks." I go, "I'm going to tell you what, I'll shoot myself before I have to come back into this place." I mean, there are people in here who have been coming in and out like a revolving door, and if you think I'm going to live my life that way, no, I'll blow my head off before I have to do that. And these are not things that psychologists like to hear. They wanted me to tell them that I really liked the arts and craft class. I was making an ashtray or something, So after she actually stuttered and take back, she didn't quite know what to say, and then she said, "Well, it's not. You could have to come back here a few times, and it could work then." I go, I ain't coming back. This is the last time you're seeing me." And so she took a deep breath and she said, "Well, do you have a plan other than blowing your head off?" I said, "Yeah, I think I do. I've been going in Alcoholics Anonymous for a year, and I think that there's something there. but I really don't know what it is. I mean, it's sort of kept me. It just sort of, if I went, and at times it would just keep me above the depression, even if it was just sort of like phony a little bit, you know. So I got discharged, and I went back to AA more with fervor now. I'm gonna go at it, you know. And I don't think I had a sponsor before. I got a sponsor. You know, he wanted to run my life. It was like an active life coach or something, you know. And went to a lot of meetings, went to a lot of commitments, and that happened till about year 6. And in year 6, you know, I was not depressed, not suicidal, not homicidal. Well, maybe a little homicidal like that at times, you know, certainly. I was asked by a guy to go down to Somerville Big Book Step Study. I had just done my second AWOL, and those AWOLs did help me, you know. But they were reading the answer at the time. I don't think they exist anymore, but this 250 questionnaire by Hazelden. And, you know, it asked questions like, when was the first time you masturbated? Did you see your mother naked? You know, something else. It answered all those, you know, horrible questions. And then I got down there, and they were either on fear or they were on sex. I don't know. And that was a hall, a little smaller than this, about 100, 120 guys in there, Parliament. You know, they just face each other in here. It's like the English Parliament, you know. And I was blown away. I was blown away because I had been asking how to do the steps for 6 years. And I kind of thought that I did. But I also knew, fortunately, I knew below the surface that I did not, and that I was not receiving the answers that made any sense to me whatsoever at all. Thank God I felt that way. And when I was going in that hallway, I knew that I was sitting with a bunch of guys that knew the answer. They had it. As this reading talked about, that they had the solution. So I got a sponsor out of there, and I did the reading, I could not write names. I actually could not write names. And I stopped, went back to open meetings, then 6 months later came back in. I got another sponsor, you know, talked to the first sponsor, and then I could write. It was just about a level of acceptance is what really happened to me. Just the idea of doing a self-appraisal like this, I just couldn't do. I couldn't crack that door and simply write names of people that I had resentments for. That concept that was very, very difficult for me to figure out. And I think obviously that's at the third step when you're doing all that. But that means that there was a crack in my insanity, where I believe that when I passed over and I could do that, I passed from being insane to the road of sanity. I think I passed over from having this very, very vague thing that I believed in God, I believed in a higher power, to the beginnings of a personal relationship with God. Because I do not believe that I'd be able to write names without that. Because I think that came from God. It didn't come from me. Because I don't think I was capable of actually doing that. And that's the way that I lived before, and that's the way that, you know, the folks around me, the way I was brought up, sort of lived like that. And many of them, the different, you know, ups and downs of it all. To having here this idea that I could have a relationship with God, and it changed everything in life. It was a watershed moment that I didn't recognize it at the time, you know, at all. You know, and then, you know, the writing, I started, it was an avalanche. It started here and went deeper and deeper, you know. I mean, I'm writing more and more, longer periods of time, and clarity was coming. You know, things that, you know, revelations in my life, you know, were starting to come about, past traumas that I didn't even look at as a trauma. I could see it as a trauma, and then, you know, sort of go through it all. The understanding that I actually did not trust anybody, and I didn't perceive it as a problem that I didn't trust anybody. And that anybody included God, even though you could recognize that there's God there, but you don't trust him. You know, that you don't trust anybody in your family. Well, you know, it's kind of probably a good thing in some ways, but it redefined everything in my life. This step redefined it, because now I could recognize even a tidbit of how that life before was insane. To live that way was insane. And that the things that I did back then and the ways that I operated myself, you know, I was a criminal many times. I broke laws. I, you know, had to carry a gun at times for real reasons, and all of that kind of stuff now was just a life of insanity, you know. You know, things that, say, my forebears and the men in my life that I was raised by, and some of them are pretty hysterical and pretty funny. And I'm not saying they weren't great guys. I loved them all, but you know, they're pretty crazy. My grandfather just nonchalantly telling me that he knows that he's going to hell. There's no doubt about it, and laughing it off and just keep right on going. You know, the distance of my father, who was brought up in this world too, that could not relate to anybody. You know, I came to believe, I understood that was how he dealt. He just couldn't relate to anybody. He couldn't trust either, you know. And of course, I couldn't trust whatsoever at all. And then understanding that there are people in the world that you can trust. You know, that was a revelation. And that started because I realized that I was insane. I recognized that to live that way and to feel that way was insanity. And that I somehow had to cross that bridge to sanity, and with that became real relationships and folks that you could trust, and that you could actually talk about your feelings, that you could reach out to others, and you could reach out to God. That there was a God there that actually, and has always in my life, you know, been someone, an entity that I could count on. And in ways that I just never thought possible. You know, I think that this book was written back in the 30s, you know, and we all sit here today, and the idea that there's no hope for an alcoholic is foreign to us. But I understand that when this was written, there was no hope for an alcoholic. There would be no hope for me. None. And that's how those folks lived, that there was no hope. And just accept it, and not even admit that it's a problem. That this is just the world the way that it is, and there's no other world out there like that. You know. He also capped it, it was really hard to bridge that gap and do that, start writing names out. Because even though you know, I came from a background where there was a religion. It was presented to me as a religion, but it was presented to me as part of my ethnicity and culture. You know, and that folks that we knew about, say, my grandmother doing the rosary in the kitchen was perceived and presented as something of a weakness. That she was weak to do that. And that the way to do it was to sort of have this, you know, religion in the background only as an ethnic background, but you just don't do that. You are self-reliant, completely. You really didn't need anybody. And of course, that goes down to the underlying of trust. That goes down to the underlying of surrender. That you have to surrender to the idea that you're screwed. They're screwed, that's their problem, but I'm screwed. That it's not right to be thinking about putting a .357 to my temple and shooting myself. That's insane, you know. And so today, you know, my life is, you know, so much better than anything like that. I still own that .357, but I never think about putting it to my temple. That, you know, when insanity comes today, when you start to slip into it, you know, it's a short duration, and I talk to God. I talked to God, you know, before I spoke here today. I talked to God a little bit on the way down here. I talk to God on a pretty regular basis about anything that's a problem. I thank God for some of the amazing things that have happened in my life that happen every single day, and say, thank you for that. Sometimes I think that I'm a genius and that it's all because of something that I did. And then an hour later I go, geez, that was God, that wasn't me. I'm sorry, and that's a revelation. And that's where I try to keep myself, and that's sanity right there. So thank you very much.